Hey everyone, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. 15 real-world modern survival skills. And this is something that I've covered before in my website, themodernsurvivalist.com, because of an email that I got from a reader. And I think it's a good point. Generally, when you think of survival skills, people think, okay, building shelters, starting fires, foraging, hunting, trapping, whatnot. Those are great, but they're usually not applicable to your everyday basis. A good example of that would be, blacksmithing. Oh, that's so cool! Building, hammering a red hot chunk of steel, making a knife with it. Yeah, that's pretty nice. But even though it is, it is an interesting skill to have, it is maybe not that useful on day-to-day basis. Let's get started because there's quite a few of them, and I'd like to cover at least a little bit of each one. Fitness and nutrition. Talking about here about not being an Olympic athlete, just a basic level of fitness in nutrition. If you're not healthy, your body is not healthy. We always say that your mind is the most important tool. That's right. But your mind is sitting in your physical body. If you're not taking care of your most important survival tool, your physical self, your body, then nothing else really matters that much. It is definitely one of those things that you see people are generally lacking. And if you don't believe me, just look around a gun show or expo, survival or prep or expo of some sort, or seminars. You will see quite easily that people just don't take care of themselves. And again, it's not about being a gym rat all day long. It's about being healthy, fit, not only so as to be physically capable of helping yourself during emergencies, disasters, but also dealing with everyday normal life. If you're not healthy, then when things get a little bit worse, it is just going to be snowballing on you. Problems are going to be increasing exponentially because of that lack of basic fitness levels and health. Sometimes you see that people don't really quite understand how important it is to have a good balanced diet. And I was actually surprised the other day by someone commenting saying that basically fast food just has a bad reputation, but it's just normal food and it's approved by whatever agency, so it's not bad for you. And that's kind of stretching things a little bit. True, if you go to McDonald's and you buy a burger, it is officially theoretically a chunk of meat that you're eating, but it's not the same thing as going to a supermarket, actually buying a fillet or some other cut of meat that you actually know where it fits in an animal, than eating that pink blob that could be just anything. I mean, it's just a waste that would otherwise end up in dog food, and it's treated with chemicals so as to make it look a certain way. That is not good for you. There's no one healthy eats fast food all day long, and it is true that you need fat, for example, but the kind of fat you get from some food is more healthy than the ones you get from others. Not a nutrition expert or a fitness expert in any way, but at least understand what you need so as to stay healthy. A little bit of cardio exercise, a little bit of understanding what kind of meals are good for you and such. That is definitely an important skill to have in my book. Business, sales, and marketing, number 2. And this is one of those things that have people go, oh, what are you talking about? Business, sales, marketing? Well, it's if you're good at doing business, if you're good at creating your own income, maybe running your own business, that is one heck of a survival tool to have, in my opinion. You're not just you're talking about having a leverage for when unemployment goes up. You're talking about being ready for something that is necessary in modern day life. You need to earn a living every single day, and it is not as good when you depend on someone else providing that for you. It's much better if you're good at maybe making that that income on your own, on yourself, running your own business. I always say that no matter what it is that you do, there's always the possibility of starting on the side a little bit of your own business. Even if it's just starting with making a few cards, making a few phone calls and offering your services, whatever it is that you do, there's usually something that you could capitalize on. If it's not your profession that you work on as of right now, there's maybe a hobby. I mean, I know tons of different stories of people, especially from back in Argentina when things got really tough. People just made a living any way they could. I had a friend from college. Her mom, I don't know what she did. Maybe she was a teacher. I don't remember right now. But she started doing a side business of her own. She started doing scented candles, and then she went on gift breakfast, like packages. I mean, stuff like that. That at the very least put a little bit of money in her pocket, and it is the kind of thing that at the very least will allow you to do something so as to get by during the tougher times. If you're good at sales, for example, that's one of the most demanded skills. Any business, any firm will be looking for someone that actually knows how to close deals, how to make sales. It is when things get tough, someone that keeps business going, someone that keeps sales going, it is one of the most valuable skills that companies are out there looking for. If you have that, you definitely have a modern survival skill, because you're going to be more employable. Same for marketing. If you're good at that, you're going to be more employable, you're going to be more in demand, and absolutely it is a survival skill. It allows you to keep making a living. Number 3, finances and budgeting. If you're able, if you know how to run your own budget, how to handle your own finances, that's pretty important stuff as well. A lot of you guys are worried about economic downturns, economic collapses and such. Well, you know what? If I can relate a little bit towards that, I will say that if it wasn't for my folks' knowledge on finances, on what was going on, we would have gotten caught even more by surprise by what was happening. An understanding of the financial system of the country being shaky, understanding that a bank holiday was around the corner. That kind of knowledge, that kind of understanding was what allowed some people to get the money that they had in banks out of it before they actually closed. Some other folks had done so before. Others did more closer to when this actually went down. But it is definitely in a modern world that mostly runs on money for all practical purposes. Understanding it and knowing how to budget it as well, knowing how to handle your own house's budget, how to cut on expenses when possible. Man, that is a huge survival skill. Right now, right this moment, people in Argentina are going through a pretty tough time with a devaluation of 20%, I think, in a few days, almost a week. Prices, was just reading, going up 50% in some cases. 50% increase in prices. You don't know what that does to your salary. It basically destroys it. And you have to find ways of making the most of the money that you have. Trying to move a little bit faster here. A second language, number 4. Absolutely, it is. I mean, if it wasn't for the skill of knowing a second language, I wouldn't even be talking to you guys. It is something that gives you an edge in a world that is becoming more and more competitive by the day. Especially your children will grow up in a world where the competition will be fierce. And having a second language will give them, or will give you an edge that others may not have. No matter what it is that you do for a living, if you're a lawyer, doctor, whatever it is that you do, if you have that added value, then you're going to be more interesting. Then you're going to be more you're going to be a better asset to anyone that is looking to employ you. You're going to be more capable yourself to actually talk with people in different languages. It's take for example in US right now, Spanish as a second language. That's a survival skill that's going to be allowing you to communicate with an entire group of people in your country that maybe otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. It's going to be a street survival skill as well. Many of the things said in Spanish you will not be understanding if you, of course, don't know that language. Moving forward, haggling and negotiating. Again, very closest to budgeting and making the most out of every buck that you have. If you're good at negotiating, if you're good at haggling, maybe you're not going to be haggling when buying at Walmart, of course, but when you buy in second hand, if you buy from Craigslist or it's some smaller stores, you are able to haggle a little bit. But it's not just that, it's about learning to negotiate and make the most of the deal in your favor. And this goes from everything. If it's, I think, it wasn't that long ago I talked about buying in a surplus store a few pocket knives that I actually have in display over there. And, we were buying 2, 3, well, maybe I can get a discount on the fourth one, just a few bucks less on that. Yeah, sure, why not? That's a skill that you practice. And the mechanism going on, that's actually pretty interesting. The mechanism going on, it's the same if you're haggling on a couple of pocket knives, if you're haggling or negotiating on your salary, on a raise, if you're negotiating the price of a house you're about to buy. If you're good at negotiating and trying to make the most of the deal, it's a skill. It's a modern survival skill that is going to be saving you hundreds of thousands of dollars across your life, during your life. First aid, obvious enough. This would be one of those skills that you should have, even though you're not going to be using it on normal day-to-day basis, but it's important enough because for obvious reasons, you just never know when someone gets hurt, when you get hurt yourself. For first aid skills, you have classes on emergency first aid. You have, even in hospitals, you'll usually find the Red Cross or hospitals giving classes. Usually they're free, so that's something you should definitely take, and then start building on that. Once you have a basic understanding on how to care for basic situations like cuts, people going unconscious and such, then you start building on that with a little bit more knowledge. But you have to start somewhere. Moving on, security and self-defense. Again, this would be one of those skills that, especially self-defense, you're not using it all the time, but whenever it is that you actually have to use it, there's really no replacement for that. And this could be, of course, depending on where you are and such, armed self-defense, self-defense with knives, self-defense with your bare hands. Even if you are counting on armed self-defense as part of the system, and this is very important to understand. The gun is just the tool you end up using. In many cases, actually, the fight, the fight is the most important part of the word gunfight. If you cannot fight without the gun, then you're gonna be a little bit more compromised if things don't go exactly the way you're expecting, which is usually how self-defense scenarios end up going down. Usually they don't go the way you want. In very close quarters, very close distances, contact distance maybe, you will have to at least have some basic knowledge of how to use your hands for defense. Going back to the top of the list in terms of fitness, if you're not in somewhat proper physical shape, maybe it's going to be even harder to perform that. And there's always the possibility of combining these. For example, if you don't like going much to a gym, you like maybe boxing, you like maybe some martial art, then that's going to be covering two of the skills you're looking to develop. You're going to be having some basic idea on using your hands for self-defense, and at the same time you're going to be working out so as to stay fit. Whenever you can do that, absolutely. in terms of security, that would be one of the skills that is always being used. If you don't, especially when in more dangerous places, if you don't constantly practice healthy security habits, then you're going to be paying for that. Not only keeping your doors locked, keeping your mouth shut in terms of things involving money and such. It is one of those things that you have to use and put into practice on a daily basis as part of ordinary life. Awareness. Will awareness be a skill? I think it is. I think it is because awareness is something that you practice, you exercise. Some people walk through life in their own mental bubble, thinking of whatever it is, and others are a little bit more aware of their surroundings. I would suggest practicing being aware of your surroundings. And it's not only because of security, it's because of everything else that goes on around you. Avoiding problems, knowing, listening and smelling. I remember many times when walking the street or something like that, and you would just smell. I've smelled gunpowder many times, and probably something had happened there before. Or if there's, especially when I was working downtown in the capital of Buenos Aires, if there had been recently problems, or even one time during a lunch break, there was a riot breaking out right when we were having lunch, and later on you would smell that smell of the tear gas. So it's all these things about being aware of what's going on, looking at people in front of you and your back around you, and if you don't practice these habits, you will not have them when needed, and you're going to be getting caught by surprise. So at least try practicing a little bit of that. Recently I was listening to this pickpocketer. He would say that one of his favorite victims were teenagers or younger people with their headphones, and just listening to music and maybe staring at something but concentrating on the music. Those would be good targets for him, because they would be enclosed in their own world without any level of awareness whatsoever. Moving on, another skill would be understanding the grid of your city. And this is everything from understanding how the main arteries of traffic are laid out, understanding where power comes from in your city, in your town, what the water grid is like, where water comes from, where it's treated, power transformers, where they are, which places are likely to flood if it rains a lot, which places are likely to be caught with more heavy traffic if there's ever an emergency and everyone tries to leave at the same time, which roads to avoid and such. Those are all things that if you have a better understanding of them, you're going to be quite a bit better prepared for dealing with problems on the go, especially when you're out and about doing stuff, driving, walking. If you already have a pretty good idea of the layout of your city and basically how it works, the grid, how workers of the city also handle business, like for example police, which places they patrol the most, which ones they don't look after that well, and where you are going to be expecting maybe to find a police vehicle parked if there's ever trouble or problems and you need help. You already have the mental image that over here I'm very likely to find a police officer, or over there I'm likely to be getting closer to emergency medical care. Understanding your city, understanding the grid, how it works, and where each piece fits. Another good skill, backpacking. Yeah, I was just saying at the beginning how many of the wilderness survival skills are not really that applicable to modern day life. But at the same time, if you pick up a backpacking and hiking as a hobby, that's again covering, going back to number one, fitness, staying in shape. Not only that, but backpacking has certain similarities, such as covering the basics of staying warm, of understanding food, how it is that you cook it, which types of food are good for you. Backpacking has many little things to pick from that would be important for urban survival and modern survival as well. A lot of the gear actually that you would have for backpacking can be used at home when there's blackouts. It could give you a good idea of the kind of stuff that you need for a car emergency kit. So it is something to look into. Another skill, defense driving. Yeah, well, usually this isn't something that people put into practice a lot. I think it's a good skill to have. I think it's good because when I'm not talking here only about potential carjackings and problems on the road. Road rage alone is, it is a problem. It is something that if you have at least some basic understandings of a couple of defensive driving moves, and you know how to put them into place, they could be potentially very beneficial in this scenario. And as I said in the beginning, things that even if you're not using it on day-to-day basis, things that are likely to happen. Crime, being robbed, being mugged, that's likely to happen. That's somewhat likely to happen. Not very likely in all things considered. Road rage, for example, having problems with a drunk. You just never know who's out there. Sometimes they're drunk, sometimes they're pissed or from whatever. Sometimes they really have mental problems. So understanding how to use your vehicle in defensive situations, that is something that I definitely look into. Food production and preparation, cooking. Not only that would be closer to nutrition. Food production in terms of growing your own food, having your own animals and such. It is indeed a skill that you would be benefiting from. And this again goes back to number one, fitness and nutrition. If you grow your own food, probably you know what you're doing and you have healthy food in the table because of this. It's a skill that it's going to be helping complement and supplement any financial shortcomings. If you have a little bit less money, you can maybe produce a little bit more of your own food. So it's definitely a skill to look into and develop if it's something that you see yourself doing. Do yourself jobs, another skill. Tasks, DIY or do yourself jobs in terms of home repairs, knowing how to fix stuff around the house. That's going to be a great skill so as to not only save money, but make repairs on your own when even if you had the money, you cannot count on anyone else to make them. Basic understanding on how to fix stuff, appliances around the house, how to make some home repairs, how to a little bit of carpentry. And those are all things that eventually does come in useful, and absolutely something to look into. Electronics and ham radio communication, another skill. Maybe close to do-yourself projects. Understanding knowledge on electronics is going to be giving you more tools so as to fix stuff around the house, appliances and such. Understanding on how to use a radio. This would be one of those things you would be using in emergency cases, but communication when things really do get ugly and you're not using there's no phone network, there's no internet, there's no nothing. Ham radio, if you know how to use it, it's gonna be a pretty important, pretty huge asset in some of the most worst case scenarios. Finally, improvising and coping. Improvising and coping. I like this because it's a combination. Improvising in life in general. if you don't have maybe a generator, but at the same time you know that with a couple of waters, a couple of bottles of ice, a couple of bottles of soda bottles filled with water in the freezer, and a little bit of tarp will allow you to use your fridge as an ice box, as an old school ice box where guys would just put ice in them. All those little tips, or knowing how to flush a toilet with a bucket of water. A lot of people don't even know that. Those are all little things of maybe more related to the mindset aspect of modern survival. Improvising in terms of income as well. Improvising in terms of your job. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you have to take up a part-time job, but at the same time you have a hobby that you think you could capitalize on. Like I was saying before, this lady making candles and soaps and gifts and such. Maybe that's something which you could do, and that's a way of improvising as well. And finally, coping, because sometimes there's really nothing that you can do. And I think that coping is one of the things people have the most problems with. They don't understand that sometimes it's just a matter of accepting what's happening and just making the most of what you have, understanding that there's things that you will just have to do without physically and emotionally. Guys, that's basically all. Many of these things I have talked about to quite an extent in my book, The Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse, which is available in Amazon. My second book, Bugging Out and Relocating, is going great. It's almost done. I'm really excited because I find myself writing about stuff and thinking guys are going to be loving this, and going to be having more news on that soon. Folks, take care, have a great day, see you on our next video. Remember to subscribe and share the video if you liked it.